So we're going to go ahead and get started. I know everybody's got lots going on and probably a lot of different webinars and conference calls going on. So we don't want to delay you from other things in your day. So we'll get started, and as folks join in, they can catch up. So thanks for joining us today. We're hopeful that this will be helpful to you and your business. We know that there's been an avalanche of information coming at every business owner around different types of government support. So we're trying to put that all into an easily understandable format, and of course recognizing that things are changing very quickly, literally daily, sometimes hourly. And so we are often sort of in that awkward in-between stage. Well, we know that there's something that's been announced, but we're waiting to get the actual documentation from the government that explains how it's going to work. So sometimes we won't be able to get you all the details as immediately, but we're definitely trying to get as much information as possible. So bear that in mind. What I'm going to do, because we've got a bunch of, we've got 3 different orders of government that have done put in place different supports. We're going to go through by the order of government. So we'll start with municipal and then go to provincial and then federal. Of course, there's a lot of things on the federal side, so that'll probably take up the majority of the time today. But I think what's probably the best option is if you have a question about that particular item, to drop a note into the chat with your question, and that way we can address the municipal pieces at the same time and then move on to the provincial pieces and then move on to the federal pieces, just so we're not bouncing back and forth. And hopefully that will make it easier for everyone to understand and comprehend all of the different programs. So if that sounds good, if you have any, if you're out in the country or maybe you have limited internet, you might want to turn off your video screen, as that will reduce our demand on the system. And hopefully you are still able to see myself and the slide, and we'll get started with the slide deck now. So as I mentioned, we do have the microphones are turned off for everyone. So just put a note in the close in the chat field, and then that way if you have a question I can address it, and we can always turn on your microphone at that point if it's easier to ask the question verbally. So moving on, first slide done. My slide person is moving the slide. So we're going to start with the City of Thunder Bay supports. There are a few things that the City of Thunder Bay has approved at this point. The first thing being free 2-hour street parking at meters. That is currently set up till the end of April. Of course, we expect that that will be readdressed if this extends further into the future. But at this point, it is set up till April the 30th. And we pushed hard for that, working with our friends at the Community Economic Development Commission, because we know that we were seeing some business owners who were struggling with folks who were trying to do a quick in and out takeout order and getting parking tickets, and we didn't think that that was we felt that was another disincentive to folks being able to use those businesses, and so we appreciate the city stepping in to make that available quickly. At the meeting on Monday night, they made a number of other decisions to basically defer your interim tax levy payment. So for those of you who are the people in charge of paying the taxes, you know that the next tax levy payment was originally due for May the 6th. So that has now been deferred until July the 8th. Similar for water penalties, we know that they have waived the water bill payments. You can decide whether or not to pay, but if you don't pay, there won't be a penalty for the April 14th, May 15th, and June 15th water bills. Also, business-related permits. We know some businesses actually have to have a City of Thunder Bay permit to operate, as well as sign license fees. other license fees have been waived for 3 months, and then sign permit fees are reduced by 25% for 1 year. So that will allow folks to hopefully use their signage a little bit, maybe a little bit more than they would have without a significant extra cost to help their customers know what's happening if you need to get a mobile sign or that sort of thing. They've also extended the payment terms for all general accounts receivable invoices that are generated in April, May, and June for a 90-day period instead of the normal 30-day period. Now, it's important to note that if your either tax bill or water bill is on a pre-authorized payment, that you need to email the city and ask them to take you off the pre-authorized payment. Otherwise, those automatic withdrawals will happen. And we do know that there's going to be clearly significant requests. So earlier is better. If your water bill's coming out on April the 14th, you probably don't want to wait till April the 13th to ask for that. So try to get those requests in as soon as possible, and hopefully they'll be able to get that so that it doesn't come out of your account when you're not expecting it to. So that's a list of the City of Thunder Bay supports that are currently in place. We are continuing to work with the city. We have made some additional suggestions, and we will continue to work with them to hopefully move those forward to discussion at future council meetings, as we know that this is kind of an ongoing thing that we're going to need to keep working on. So the BIA is asking what those suggestions are. So one of the things that we're really trying to help share about our members' concerns is on the water bill. So we know that a lot of restaurants and hotels in particular use a very high rate of water, and that means that their daily connection fee is set at a much higher rate than a lower volume user of water. And because many of those facilities are now closed, they're being charged a significant daily connection fee that they're not able to even use the water because they're closed. So we're in discussions to try to get that to be brought forward as a suggestion, that there would be a discount to those daily user fees for those really high volume business water connection fees. So that's one of the things we're working on. We've also suggested that the MAT tax, which is being collected, be set aside for recovery efforts, so that we can ensure that we've got some resources available, and those discussions are also ongoing. So just a couple of the things that we are in conversation with the city. We do know that there has already been consideration by police to be doing a little more drive around in some areas, business areas where there is a lot less activity going, and a lot more businesses that are not manned at this point. They don't have people in the stores, just to try to raise the level of police presence. And so we certainly appreciate that, and we're open to suggestions on other things that you would like us to put forward to the city to talk to them about. So if you have suggestions, please email them to me at charla@tvchamber.ca, and we'll definitely take those into consideration in future discussions with our city councillors. So that covers the City of Thunder Bay. We're going to move on to the province of Ontario, and I have to get my notes on that. So the province of Ontario, a few things here that are of interest to business. The WSIB payments, your Workplace Safety and Insurance Board payments, are being deferred. So if you had a WSIB payment that was due on March the 31st, you can defer that for up to 6 months. And the intention of that is, of course, to try to help businesses to keep the cash in their business. We know you're going to have to pay these things eventually, but trying to ensure that as much cash can be kept in your bank as long as possible, so that you can pay those bills, the staff salaries, the suppliers, and not be in a significant cash crunch. So we're really pleased that the province has taken that step to allow businesses to keep their cash in place for other more urgent and pressing needs. The other thing, they have increased the employer health tax exemption to $100 million. So previously employers of, I think it was $500,000 were exempt. And now that health tax exemption has been increased up to $1 million. So this means that more than 90% of private sector employers won't have to pay the employer health tax in 2020. So clearly that's a significant impact across Ontario, and we're pleased with that. They've also provided a 5-month interest and penalty-free period for businesses to make payments to pretty much all of the provincially administered taxes, particularly gas taxes and tobacco taxes, those sorts of things. So those are, again, recognizing that they want to keep the businesses to have as much cash as possible in their bank accounts. So that's a quick synopsis. I think we might have one more slide on provincial support, so we'll move on to that. The electricity cost relief was something that we had a lot of calls from business about, and so we were really pleased to see the reduction to time of use, the lowest time of use rate last week. That was a really positive step to, again, keep your energy bills lower. And then for those business owners and of course their employees, you may not be aware that the province is also providing a $200 per child family support to assist with the cost of daycare and school closures. And that goes up to $250 per child for those with special needs. Now that's a one-time payment, it's not a monthly payment, but basically they're going to be sending out $200 per child or $250 for those with special needs, which is very helpful. The other thing, of course, we saw last week was the list of essential workplaces, and that list is very comprehensive, but it did also allow that even if your workplace is not considered an essential workplace, that you can still provide services online, by telephone, by delivery. And so we were really pleased to see that, because we know that there are a lot of businesses that are still, able to, especially on the retail side, to do some commerce through online or telephone means. And so we were pleased to see that option. And basically what we've been told is if you are not an essential workplace, but you are still providing those services, just to make sure that you're taking every effort to ensure the physical distancing within your facility for the staff that are working. And also, of course, using sanitation measures, etc. So doing whatever you can to keep those employees safe while they are working really applies across the board to all employers at this time. And if you don't know for sure where you fit, there is a toll-free line, 1-800-1888 number. So if you have a question about where you are in that essential service, you can call that number and they will, I understand right now they're calling you back because they do obviously have a lot of questions, but they will call you back and they will give you that clarity on how you can proceed. And this is something that they will also be addressing as new things come forward. We expect that the essential workplace list may continue to be a little bit in flux, because obviously there are some things that might change as the seasons change. So I have a question from the Waterfront District BIA. Any info on allowing retail curbside pickup? Yes, that is allowed, as I understand. Again, there is an option for pickup and delivery options. You just need to ensure that those are done in a safe manner. Same as with the takeout food option. The same would work for a curbside pickup, as we understand. So I hope that answers that question. Any other questions on provincial pieces? If not, we'll move on to the Government of Canada pieces. Now, as I mentioned, this is where there's a lot happening. And so we're going to start with the one that seems to be the most topical at the moment, because more clarity was finally announced yesterday, and that's the emergency wage subsidy of 75%. So basically how this applies is the government will provide a subsidy of 75% of the first $58,700 normally earned by each employee. So that represents a benefit of $847 per week. Of course, you have to actually be paying, it's based on what you're actually paying the employee, not based on everybody gets $847 per week. So if you're paying your employee, you know, $1,000 a week, they'll cover the $750. So just to be clear around that. The program will be in place for a 12-week period. It started on March the 15th and it goes till June the 6th. Again, the government has said that this will be something that they'll be watching closely, so that time frame could change, but at this point, that is what the time frame is. Eligible employers are those who suffer a drop in gross revenue, that's gross revenue, of at least 30% in March, April, or May when compared to the same month in 2019. So they've actually set up a very specific eligible period table, and they're considering them as 3 separate periods. So the March period is from March the 15th to April 11th, and that will be your reference period, will be the March 2020 to March 2019 revenues. The second period is going to be April the 12th to May the 9th, and that would be your April to April comparison for this year and last year. And then the third period is May 10th to June the 6th, and that will be your period for the May to May comparisons. So hopefully that helps to give a little clarity. I know at the beginning, because the process is starting mid-month, that's why the first period is actually running from March the 15th till April the 11th, so that it encompasses more of a almost a full month in the first period. I'm going to get through all of these points and then I'm going to answer the questions. So eligible businesses also includes not-for-profits and charities, so that's important to know. Applications will be managed through the CRA's My Business account, so make sure that you're taking the time now to get your CRA My Business account portal up to date, and also to set up a direct deposit, because that will expedite the flow of funds once the application process starts. The portal and the flow of funds are expected to start within 3 to 6 weeks. So the portal isn't up yet. They're saying the portal will probably be up within the next 3 weeks, and they're working to get it up as soon as possible. But of course, they know that this kind of infrastructure does take a little bit to build, and so they are giving that expectation of 3 to 6 weeks. And you will be required to apply for each month based on the revenue drop. So I've already had some members that have contacted me and said, well, my March period doesn't have a 30% drop. I'm almost there, but does that mean I don't get the subsidy? So it is a month-by-month piece. So even if you're not eligible in March, you may be eligible in April, or you may be eligible in May. And so again, you'll need to be paying attention to those details as well as the period dates, so you can actually do your calculations accordingly to determine your eligibility. So, you know, just because you might not be eligible right now doesn't mean that you might not be eligible for the next month. So I think that's a positive thing. Eligible employers include employers of all sizes across all sectors, with the exception of public service. So, of course, public sector entities like the City of Thunder Bay are not eligible. There is no maximum on the limit of the subsidy amount that an employer may claim, and the entitlement is based entirely on the actual salary or wages that you're paying to your employees. And there is an expectation that employers will make their best efforts to top up the salaries to the 100% of what those wages would have been at a pre-crisis level. So if what you were paying that employee on February the 15th, if you're able to pay them the same amount in March and April, the 75% will be on what is actually paid. If you're paying them less than the full amount because you don't have the cash flow for that, then the 75% will be, we believe, based on what you're actually paying. So just for clarity on that front. Now, the other thing to note is that for those organizations that do not qualify for this subsidy, the other subsidy is still in place. So we're going to talk about that next. But first, I'm going to ask the question here around, from Ryan here, around the 1 year operating. So the government has said that they understand that there are some businesses that haven't been operating for a year. And so they will be looking at, for those eligible employers that are established after February 2019, the eligibility will be determined by comparing monthly revenues to a reasonable benchmark. So they are taking into account the consideration that some businesses have not been in operation for a year. And Waterfront BIA says, yes, we do have to wait for royal assent. No, that's not true. Bars and, of course, royal assent, everything that the government spends has to be approved by Parliament, and so they will be bringing back Parliament, and those discussions will be happening. But we anticipate that will be happening within the 3 to 6 weeks that was discussed. The BIA says bars and restaurants are currently not included. That is incorrect. All businesses are included in the emergency wage subsidy if they have lost 30% of their revenues. So that is not correct. And then Lauren says we aren't expected to pay employees that we have laid off. So basically what the government is trying to do with this emergency wage subsidy is they're trying to encourage employers to either maintain the staff that they already have or to rehire staff that they have laid off, because the reality is it's better for the economy to have folks getting a 75% wage subsidy through their employer than it is for all of them to be trying to manage through an EI system or the emergency response benefit, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So they're basically asking employers, if you can do this, we want you to bring back your employees as soon as you can, and then we'll pay you 75% of their salary to help that happen. So if you've laid off employees right now, they are eligible for the other programs that we're going to talk about on the EI side and the emergency relief benefit. But if you bring them back, then they will be eligible for the subsidy. And then they will be taken off of the EI or the emergency response benefit. So I hope that's somewhat clear. So we're going to move on to the temporary wage subsidy. So this is the original 10% subsidy that was announced previously. And it is still in place for those companies that don't qualify for the emergency wage subsidy, which is the 75%. So even if you aren't able to say that you've lost 30% of your revenues in that March 15th to April 11th period, you can still do the automatic wage subsidy of 10% off of your remittances for that period. And so that is something that you would apply to your own payroll remittances. When you submit them to the government, you apply the 10% off if you are one of the eligible businesses. And so that was for businesses that are eligible for the small business deduction. You need to check with your accountant on all sorts. And there was a subsidy of up to $13.75 per employee and $25,000 per employer. So it was really meant for businesses that were 18 or less employees, and considered small businesses, so that it could help them. It wasn't meant for all businesses, which the emergency wage subsidy is not defined as to what kinds of business are applicable. So I think that covers the wage subsidy. So we'll move on to the emergency response benefit. So this is basically, the government realized very quickly when there was 1 million applications to the EI program within a week that they weren't going to be able to manage the EI system for this crisis. And so they've come up with this new emergency response benefit. And it's available $2,000 a month for up to 4 months for workers who can't work because of COVID-19. They don't have any paid leave or other income support. They're sick, they're quarantined, they're taking care of someone who is sick. They're a working parent that has to stay home because they don't have any childcare, or because there's someone else in the family that needs to be taken care of, and so they can't go to work. Go to the next slide, Riley. They are potentially workers who are still employed but aren't being paid because there's not sufficient work, and so the employer has asked them not to come into work. So that's those folks who've maybe done a layoff with the insufficient work code. But it also applies to self-employed individuals who would otherwise not be eligible for employment insurance. So that is a really important piece because we know that most small business owners are not able to get EI. And so that is important because it may be able to provide you with some support if your business isn't able to pay you right now. Now Carrie's asking, is this available to students who would normally receive full-time work for the summer but now are unable to find work? So the answer is no. This is in place for those people who were working before the emergency happened and now are not working. It is not in place for folks who have not been working and are now available to look for work. And so that is an issue that has been raised because we know that there's a lot of university and college students, even high school students, that are going to be looking for summer jobs and would be counting on that income, but they are not eligible for this. You have to have been someone who has been working and has lost work as a result of the COVID crisis. So hopefully that helps to clarify. Dominique, self-employed individuals. I have many clients and friends that are self-employed and have seen a significant reduction in business but have no staff. However, their income is not zero. Do they qualify for some version of the $2,000 per month benefit? Is it prorated? For example, if they went from making $10,000 a month to $1,000 a month. So again, this is one of the questions that is coming up right now. And is something that the government is being asked for clarity on. So it's my understanding that if you are self-employed, but you still have income, then no, you are not eligible. But if you are self-employed and you do not have income for a period of 14 days, then you are eligible. So we had a conference call with the Canadian Chamber with someone from the Social Development Department on this last week, and it all comes down to that 14-day period. So if you have no income for 14 days, then it's our understanding that you can apply for the emergency response benefit for those 14 days. If you then have income after those 14 days, then you will not continue to receive the benefit. So again, it's going to be something where within a month period, you're going to be going into pretty much apply every month to be able to say, okay, I haven't had income for 14 days of this 30 days. And I believe it's 14 consecutive days. So I want to apply for the emergency response benefit. So these are the kinds of details that we're still waiting for a little more clarity. Again, the government has not yet opened up the application process. That is going to be available next week. And so then that is where there will be more detail announced around that kind of thing. You know, there's a lot of folks in the gig economy who, you know, had contract work and maybe they got their final check, but now they're, you know, and they've got something else coming, but they're still doing work, but they're not really getting paid. So all those kinds of things are being discussed at this point. And we are waiting for further clarity, but that's the understanding of what I've been told through the conference call that we had last week. And yes, I mean, certainly there will be there will be folks that will potentially be taking advantage of this. And again, that's where we're waiting for the application process, because there will be a requirement for folks to, similar to when you're on EI, you have to sign a form that says that no, I have not had income. Yes, I have been working or looking for work, those kinds of things. There will be an attestation that is required. And so, you know, there's a little bit of trust happening here where the government is trying to help people as quickly as possible, and, you know, hoping that folks do not abuse the system, because obviously that's not good for any of us. But they will definitely be doing their best to deal with those folks if that type of fraud is happening. So definitely an issue there. Okay, moving on to other Government of Canada supports. So the Government of Canada has also deferred payments on income tax. Oops, sorry. Carrie said she had a question that wasn't answered. Sorry, Carrie. So we're going to go back to the emergency response benefit. My company is incorporated and I get a wage from my company every 2 weeks. I've lost 100% of my contracts and my company is bringing in zero. Would I qualify for the 75% wage subsidy as an employee or the emergency response benefit? So if you are on salary, it is my understanding if you get a wage from your company and you're not getting dividends from your company, then yes, you are eligible, as we understand as of yesterday, for the emergency wage subsidy. Again, I can send you the link so you can take a look at that, but there is specific wording about not arm's length employees, and that they will still be eligible for the wage subsidy as long as they are on a wage and not on a dividend sharing and that sort of thing. So we believe that that is the case. And you may also be able to apply for the emergency response benefit for the 14-day period if you don't have the cash to be able to pay yourself and then wait for the subsidy back. So there's some questions there. So yes, we will share the links as well. Will be included with on our webpage. So just watch for those. Okay, I think that's that. So moving on to tax payment deferrals. So income tax payments have been deferred until August the 31st. And so that is for any income tax that you had owing if you were paying a monthly payment to pay back income taxes for the previous year, or if your income tax amounts are due, that has been deferred until August the 31st. Also, the goods and services tax and the harmonized sales tax payments are deferred until June the 30th. So we know that most businesses have to pay their GST, HST returns at the end of either, you know, every month or every second month. And so this is something that was announced last week. It wasn't part of the original deferral, and your chamber network pushed really hard to get GST and HST added, because again, we know that those dollars in your business are very important to be able to keep you operating right now. And so those payments were deferred as of last week, and those deferrals go to June the 30th. Also, there, of course, will be no interest or penalties accumulating on those amounts during this period. So hopefully that helps your business. And we're going to move on to the next slide. So this is where things get a little complicated. So I'm not a banker, but I'm going to just throw these out there for you for information. And a lot of these business credit pieces we're still waiting for information. So the government has announced 3 different things around credit. So the first being the Canada Emergency Business Account. So that's an interest-free loan of up to $40,000. It's available to small businesses and not-for-profits to help cover operating costs. And you must demonstrate an outlay of $50,000 to $1 million in total payroll in 2019. So it's for a certain size of business, clearly based on the parameters there. Now, I did just receive an email from one of the banks this morning outlining how that's going to work in their bank. So this is something that is available through your bank. So you need to, if you think this is something that you want to find out about, and if you meet that 50,000 to $1 million in payroll perspective, you want to call your banker, your commercial banker, and ask them what the process is at your bank, because it is being offered through the existing bank. So you don't have to go to the Business Development Bank, the BDC, for that. And then there are loan guarantees for small and medium-sized business. And again, this is allowing some operating credit and cash flow loans through your commercial bank as well. So that's another piece to be asking your banker about, and whether you're applicable for it. And I know Mike Nitz is on the call, so at the end of this section, I'll give Mike the opportunity to maybe provide any clarity if he has more details. But that's our understanding, is that you deal with your own financial institution to be able to get more details on this. And then the third piece, we're going to move to the next slide, is the co-lending program for small and medium-sized business. And this is also something that the BDC is working to allow different types of loans at different levels. And there are different rules, I believe, depending on the size of business and the size of loan and some of your credit history. So those programs, we understand, will roll out in the 3 weeks after March 27th, so basically middle of April. But we're already starting to see some financial institutions that are announcing that, you know, they're getting their details sorted out. And Minister Morneau and Prime Minister Trudeau did mention yesterday that they thought that at least the 40,000 interest-free loan was pretty much ready to go from the bank. So a good time to be calling your banker anyways, just to talk about your personal situation, but definitely give them a call and find out what kinds of credit programs might be available to assist you. Mike, I don't know if you've got anything else that you need to add on that piece. So yeah, I'll give you 2 seconds.
Yeah, for sure. What we've been working on immediately was working capital loans. So you can apply to us for a working capital loan up to $2 million. It depends on the amount, what process we have to go through. We've had over 10,000 applications for that, so we're trying to work through those. The loan guarantee with EDC apparently is live now. The co-lending is interesting. So if you need $100,000, you go through your chartered bank. Your bank will give you 20,000 of that 100,000, and the 80,000, the 80% will come from us. So the direct contact for that program is your chartered bank. Hopefully you've talked to your commercial or small business account manager already. Bear with them in the amount of requests they're getting, and that they still may not know a lot about the program, but definitely let them know that you're interested in being one of the first to know once that information is broadcast.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for being available on the call to give some clarity on that. And we are working to get a future webinar to talk more about the different credit programs that are available in cash flow management and that sort of thing. And we do have on our resource page today a link to a BDO Canada is holding a webinar tomorrow to talk about some of those issues as well. So you can take a look at that. So we're going to move on to, I think that's the end. So I hope this is helpful. If anyone has any additional questions that you want to make, please feel free to either unmute your own mic and ask them, or to, okay, so Jeff Cool is saying, do you know if non-revenue generating nonprofits and charities like those that survive on donations can apply for the emergency wage subsidy? How is gross revenue defined for these types of organizations? I'm glad you asked that, Jeff. So the government did address that yesterday in the backgrounder that they sent out, and they do recognize that for charities, it's a little bit different because of the way that that money is collected in some charities. It's not it's a different business cycle. So what they have said is that they are basically going to be working with charities. I'm just trying to find the specific language in the 20 pages of documentation that I have on this, that they will be working with specifically with charities to try to get to make sure that they're getting it right. So they say that they'll continue to work with the charitable sector, to ensure that the definition of revenue is appropriate to your circumstances. So hopefully that that clarity will come out in the coming weeks, so that you can be applicable for your charity. So hopefully that helps. And Mike has just shared a little business flow chart here on the chat, so feel free to download that for yourselves, as that would be that may be helpful to your business. We do have our resource page at tvchamber.ca/COVID-19, and that's where we're updating everything as soon as it's possible to get the details out to you. And of course, we're also trying to post on social media as those details come out as well. We will have coming up within the next week a microsite that we'll be working with the Canadian Chamber on, that will have a much broader scale of resources available, not just government programs, but also broader scale around information that might be helpful. And certainly, I would love to hear from you if there's information that you can't find on our site. Give us a call, give me a call, drop me an email. My number is 624-2620, and my email is charlotte@tvchamber.ca. And I would be more than happy to chat with you about your specific questions. And if we don't know the answers, we do have links to both the provincial and the federal government for to flow those questions up to the ministry directly. And so if I don't know, I ask the people that are talking with the ministry's office day by day. So hopefully that is helpful. We do have a lunch and learn scheduled again next Thursday, and we've got MNP coming to talk about tax and cash flow advice. So watch for that link to come up. We're just in the process of finalizing the registration page for that, and hopefully that will be something that is useful. And again, our resource page, we are posting other webinars and things that we're hearing about there. So continue to keep your eyes peeled there as we're trying to share as much information as we can to help you all through this difficult time. So that's it for me. If there's no other questions, then I want to just say thank you so much for participating. I hope this is helpful. We will be posting this online as a video after the fact. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out to our office, and we'll be very happy to do our best to answer your questions and address your concerns. So thank you so much, and have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the sunshine.